obviously. So currently, we're going to talk about residential units, because that's the way we measure everything, and almost all governments do that. So a residential unit in our case would be a 3/4 inch water line, and currently that's $850 inside the city. Their proposal is to bring that number to $1,500. Now, why is that? Well, they look at all the capital. Remember, we're not talking about operational costs. We're talking about just the capital cost itself. What would it cost you to build it and replace it? And what is anticipated for us? An example today, if it will ever stop raining, this is the first part of December, and dries out, we've already purchased a piece of property and we're going to do an exploratory well that's out off of Belton Bridge. And our hopes is that exploratory well, so we'll value everything, but at the end of the day, if it becomes a production well, we're over $300,000 in estimated cost for that. Now, if you went out and put a well in your backyard, I've done that, you're not going to have $300,000. Well, there's a big difference between what we do as a municipality and what Georgia EPD requires. And then, in addition to that, there could be, and we've budgeted for this, filtration that would be required. Believe it or not, groundwater in our particular area, we generally aren't affected by having to do filtration. So what you get out of the tap now is filtered only at 2 of our 4 wells. But if we don't need filtration on that particular well out there, I'm just trying to kind of build a case for an understanding of how that would work. So at the end of the day, there's $300,000+. So when they estimated what your capital exposure should be, they're trying to figure out what is the needs future as been for what we've pinpointed. So that's how they arrived at the $1,500. Plus, in addition, I'll just tell you down the road, as we build additional capacity, we need to have additional reserve capacity. And so that could be in the form of a water tank, whether it be an elevated tank or a ground level tank. And you might want to know the difference, so I'll tell you that. I'll try not to bore you to death. Somebody tell me when I'm going too long. But an example is we use elevated tanks not only for storage and reserve capacity, but that's how we build the pressure in the lines. So right now, it's not likely that we would recommend another elevated tank. Probably sometime in the future when we need additional capacity, would probably be based on a ground elevated tank, which surprisingly is a little less money. So in that regard, we've looked at, if you've been to any of these meetings and the utility committee meetings, we've looked at what we need in sewer capacity. And for those that were in the audience previously when we talked about the Moss family property that was proposed and approved by the council for additional residential down here on Athens Street, that was a big deal. And we also know some things that are in the pipeline. So you have to keep looking forward. When we look forward, we're looking at what we currently have in capacity shouldn't ever exceed 65%. Once you hit 65%, that should trigger what your next expansion is. It's exactly what we're doing right now with the well that's proposed on Belton Bridge Road. And I would suggest to you, when and if that well comes into production, we need to be looking at the next well. There'll never be enough water. On sewer, we did the same thing. So the current capacity at our plant, we're fortunate in that today it's only around 35% capacity. But reality is we can look down the road, as an example of 481 homes that were approved on Moss family property, that moves that barometer up considerably about what our future needs and capacity would be. So we've actually looked at that number and recognized that when we hit 65% of capacity, we should be under design and permitting. So permitting comes from EPD, design comes from what we're going to build. Fortunately for the wastewater treatment plant that we built that with the intentions to add on to it. Matter of fact, the best part is we can duplicate what we have in the ground right now and build 3 more phases so we can increase capacity. And it won't happen in my lifetime, thank goodness. But down the road, that was probably one of the best investments the city made because long term, Our drainage area, if you look at that land use map over there, that drainage area, it encompasses all of 365, where we're going to continue to see growth, as well as the city proper. So it's a great opportunity. So on the sewer side of the equation, whereas today we charge $5,000, their number proposed right now is $7,500. So that's what we're here to talk about tonight. So if we'd like to have anybody that would like to speak in favor of, and it won't surprise me if nobody stands up and jumps up and down, in favor of the two items being considered tonight, we're just considering the capital component on the TCRs on water or sewers. Anybody in the audience would like to speak in favor of those? The next question would be, is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak in opposition? And then the next question before you jump up, if you still got questions, I'll try to answer them. So, anybody would like to speak in opposition? Anybody would like to just ask the general question? You got to come up to the microphone, say your name, where you live, and mention to your wife I said hi.
Why do we have to give her a name when we got a name notice?
Come on.
I'm serious. Okay, thanks for
Keep it
that.
minute straight.
Are we paying for Moss Farm? Are we?
Excellent question.
We're going up because.
Excellent question. So here's the most important part that you brought up. These are going to be for new customer rates. And really what it's doing, it's making sure that we don't burden the existing customers. So in the future, just like right now we have enough capacity on water, I'd argue that there's never enough capacity. But as we build that new well out on Belton Bridge Road, and I'm crossing my fingers that it will become a good production well, the people who take advantage of that won't be the existing customers, it will be the new customers. So this rate we'll never see for the existing customers for these capital improvements.
So we're not paying for the well there?
Yes. Now, we may, just to let you know, the council puts money ahead, so eventually, though, that pays back those dollars. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Excellent
I
question.
just have a concern, not
Roy Hall, you can also tell your wife that I said hi.
Roy Hall, 51, Mountain View Parkway. You're really just a concern, not necessarily for or against, but as myself considering future development, if someone comes and mentions this Moss Creek
I
as a
would
good
suggest
example,
the answer is yes. Our friends down in Flowery Branch, you and I know, recently proposed a significant, complete rebuild on their wastewater treatment. And they estimated it'd be around $27 million. It came in at $53 million. We don't want that same thing to happen here, but the scenario would be the same. It's whatever it cost us should be paid by the developer. So it should never be back to a burden. And trust me, everybody's having a sticker shock right now. When we looked at the Moss family property and we were trying to figure out what it would cost for wastewater, because at some point it triggers that, we were at $24 versus what we did 12 years ago for 12. Now, and that number's, it's not going to go down. So to answer your question, yes, it's likely as time goes on, where we're addressing these numbers today for cost of replacement, we're going to understand that down the road that's going to be continue to go up. I wish it didn't. You and I know. It's like a loaf of bread. Who would have ever thought we were paying $4?
OSB.
Right? OSB boards, the only thing that's come down lately.
Thank you.
Anybody else got any questions? The reporter, were you raising your hand or were you just thumbing through the stuff over there? Joe?
The ordinance currently breaks out inside and outside the city for
Right.
TCRPs. Is there any proposal to increase the outside the city?
There is not at this time, and there's a rationale behind our agreement with Hall County.
All right. Is anybody else here to be heard at this public hearing? And I'll declare this public hearing closed. We'll have another public hearing next week and then it would be before the council for consideration.
Thank you, Joey.
Yes, sir.
I want to welcome everybody here tonight. Glad to see all y'all here. I got a couple of things. The city of Cornelia this week passed what they call a resolution of civility. And I'm going to read it to you. It's something for us to think about. It's the 9 pillars of civility. Be considerate of others' opinions. It's okay to agree to disagree. Manage your emotions. Get curious instead of furious. A silent voice is not always a weak voice. Silence, sometimes it's okay not to respond. Be kind. Make your point about the issue, not the person. Actively listen to learn how to engage respectfully. Think about the impact of your actions and not the intent. Ask questions to learn. Answer questions with respect. Remember the acronym QTIP. Quit taking it personal. Have empathy. Just because you have not experienced it does not mean it does not exist. And the number one pillar of civility, doing others as you have them doing to you. That's my opinion. That's my speech for tonight. I'm through with it. I've been asked about prayer. I understand there's not everyone here is Christian. I'm not trying to offend anybody by this. I am a Christian, and I will pray a Christian prayer. If you don't like my prayer, you silence and listen. And step outside. But I'm going to pray a Christian prayer. Let's pray. Our dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this opportunity to come before you to serve the city of Louisville. Thank you for your guidance and your wisdom to help us make the right choices. Forgive us for our sins. We ask in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Flag, please. Attention. Salute. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Award y'all come up next week, so all of them do your thing. All right, guys. Tell us about money.
You want to talk about your other month first? Remind everybody.
I just
Good. All right. So let's talk. We had a work session last week. We got a chance to talk about some of this. So I'm going to do y'all a favor and pull up a couple of things here.
I skipped that. Sorry.
It's all right.
Well, I've been hitting. I'm trying to get through that. I guess I'm trying to hold it.
All those in favor going on early, say
All right. I skipped part of it. I didn't way ahead of myself. I did skip certain comments. I apologize. Anybody wants to speak?
Citizen comment?
Yes, sir. Let me get June first before we come. June had her hand up.
First one?
June had her hand up first.
Oh, it's okay. It's all right.
I do arrange furniture first. My name is June Benson. I live at 4719 Old Cornelia Highway, Louisville, Georgia. I've got two issues that I want to speak about. The first one is what I consider a life-saving issue. The last time I was at the depot, I was looking for the AED. I didn't find an AED. And I found out we don't have to have one in every public building. But I thought, that is a life-saving thing. As we all know, people do drop dead. It's not a pleasant thing. CPR is wonderful, but it would be wonderful if we had an AED at our depot. We have so many events over there with people of various ages. And if it saved one life, it would be worth the $2,000 that it would cost for a Philips AED. And Philips is a good brand because you know I worked in the heart cath lab, and that's what we had for a lot of our heart equipment was Philips brand. It's a good brand, and it's around $10,000. You have to be trained, But if you can read power or on, you can use it. It tells you what to do. It tells you every step to take. And I wish you all would consider getting one for the depot. I hope there's one in this building.
There is not.
Oh, Lord. I know, I went to Home Depot the other day, and right on the front door, they had a red heart that said AED on site. And I know schools have to have them, but people go a lot of places, so I really wish, and I hope we can afford to have one in City Hall maybe, and one at the depot. At the depot, think about our events, how many people are there? So would you consider that? The second thing that I want to ask you about, I have a petition at the back of the room. We need a library in Louisville. Thank God right now we have a bookcase in front of Dave's store, thanks to Mr. Millingham and his wife. But that's a bookcase with shelves. That's it. And you know a library has computers, it has story hour for children, they teach crafts. I have 22 pages of activities from the Gainesville Library just this month. Every month they have a whole new slew of activities. So if y'all would sign my petition, and I do have a meeting with the county commissioner tomorrow, but I will be passing this petition around for more than just today and tomorrow. I'm going to be passing it around for a while, because we really need a library here. We deserve it. Thank you.
And just for the council's knowledge, we've looked at AED in the past. They have come so far. June's right, but they've got them now that you don't have to do anything. You push a button, it speaks and walks you through 3 steps that you can do in order to be able to do that. I mean, it's cool. And it only has 1 button. So to walk you through the 3 steps until you're ready for it. So it doesn't require the training it did in the past, even an individual. So, what we'll do is we'll put that matter on the budget for this coming fiscal year for y'all to consider again.
Can I speak in favor of that?
You just did.
Well, I just want to say that I think it's a good idea, because I just found out 3 weeks ago that I had, last time I was here, I had 2 95% blocks in my heart arteries and a 70%. And I had no idea. I could have fallen over. Just by the grace of God, I was alive. So I had 2 procedures at the heart cath lab, thanks to them. And I still have the scar here to prove it. Last Tuesday, I had 1 stent put in, and the week before that, I had 1 put in.
Unbelievable.
Yes, so I think that's a good idea.
And the cost has gotten down where it's very productive. The only thing I will tell you about, just remember this, they had to be serviced every 3 years. So bear that in mind. It's one of those, if you don't use it, that's not a bad thing. But unfortunately, every 3 years, you're probably going to want to replace the whole thing.
Hi, Mordecai.
Okay, thank you. I want to tell you how to reduce roadblocks to progress. It is of great importance to find ways to eliminate the things that keep us from progressing towards the future we want for ourselves, and even more importantly, for our children. We citizens are hoping and praying that our city officials take a hard look at what has happened in the past, and certainly not let things that have brought shame and disgrace to our city occur. I sat on the city council for 20 years, and I don't recall having any serious difference with anyone. I have asked you, Mr. Mayor, to come and talk with me, but that hasn't happened, and I'd like to ask, why not? One of the main things in life is not to let anyone control you. You have got to let people learn to be responsible for their own actions and decisions. These are people that will always have a sad story, so please take control of your own happiness. I want our leaders to work and plan for our families to have a comfortable place to live, work, raise the children. Just remember that dreams don't have an expiration date. Now, if this, we certainly will find legally to make this happen by finding leaders that are qualified to bring about a better way of doing this. So please don't lose faith because of hardships, because it is not what you are going through, but what you are coming to that counts. How you respond to any offense will determine your future. Just remember, if we work as a team, all of us will reach our goals. Thank you.
Anybody else?
My name is Joseph Johnson, live at 6017 Maiden Lane, Louisville, Georgia. First, I'd like to start off by asking Mr. Mayor for your resignation. Your continued actions that are inappropriate. We'll go back to the comments in regards to flowers at the training. That if she's ugly, oh no. I mean, those comments promote rape culture. And I mean, it went on record. The other issue I'd like to bring up, I'm going to read a email that was sent to me by a concerned citizen. And it says, "To whom it may concern, I've lived in Lula for over 20 years and have attended city council meetings to keep up with community plans and how they might affect me. In the past, I've enjoyed these meetings as it has been a time to get to know other residents as well as the elected leadership. During the last election cycle, new leadership was elected. Since then, the city council meetings have taken on a strong religious tone. I recognize and respect that ceremonial prayer at government meetings is legal. However, I believe this leadership group has crossed the line in stating that our community has a certain belief, and lengthy Christian prayers are now recited. I find this upsetting, offensive, and inappropriate. All Lula residents do not share the same religious beliefs. At this time, I cannot attend these meetings as I feel that I am being subjected to one religious belief and that my civil rights are being violated. I hope that the city leadership will embrace diversity and acknowledge that they must follow the law and not infringe on citizen rights. With respect, a concerned citizen." The article that the person is referencing is the one that you referenced. It was your decision to start with the Lord's Prayer. I asked you tonight before the meeting if you would entertain me giving a non-Christian prayer for invocation. And you denied that. So you have directly endorsed multiple times one religion over another. That is a violation of the Establishment Clause of my First Amendment rights and everyone else's First Amendment rights here. So I would ask the council that if we are not going to allow secular prayers for invocation, that we stop prayer altogether. And it is offensive if we're endorsing one over the others. The continued inappropriate comments and actions, I mean, how far are we going to let this go? I have reached out to the ACLU. I've also reached out to the Freedom from Religion on a formal complaint, as well as civil suit. I mean, not everyone shares the same belief, but we can all come together as a community to grow, to progress through times. This is an issue, as I'm not the only citizen that feels this way, and I would encourage y'all to look at the severity of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Hey, Maida Browning, 5667 Julian Ball. Sorry. I have never been much of an activist. I'm not a keyboard warrior, and I'm definitely not one to come to meetings at City Hall to speak about investigative reports. But after reading the sexual harassment report, I feel speaking is a necessary evil. The 21-page report was eye-opening, to say the least. If you haven't gotten a copy, One of our local residents has been nice enough to print them, and they're here tonight if you'd like one. Here is the Cliff Note version. Our councilman, Gene Bramlett, was accused of saying a comment that made another employee feel uncomfortable on October 7th of 2022. The employee reported the incident promptly, an investigation was started, and the given employee, I will call Jane just to make sure everybody knows what I'm talking about. On 10/12 of 22, Jane and all the individuals advised not to talk about the investigation. On 10/15 of 2022, Jane was interviewed about her complaint. The investigator advised Jane, again, don't talk about the incident. It doesn't need to be discussed with anyone. On 10/16 of 2022, the investigator contacts Councilman Gene Bramlett. Bramlett's first question, do you have video or audio of the incident? I'm not sure how anyone else in the room feels, but speaking for myself, knowing in my heart that I haven't done anything wrong, asking for proof of said incident is not where I start. If I had done nothing wrong, I would want to meet with the investigator to get the entire story. But what does Bramlett do? 6 times in the investigation. A subpoena is necessary, and his lawyer must be present for him to speak with an investigator. This does not seem like actions of an innocent man. On 10/22 of 22, the investigator calls Bramlett to ask if they can meet, because video is available for them to view. 7 days after his initial call from the investigator, Bramlett asked exactly what comment was made and still contends that no comment was made. He never embraced Jane, and no video would show that. Side note, the video clearly shows Bramlett embracing Jane, and as quoted by the investigator, Bramlett walked up, reaches around her, embraces her, and pulls her towards him. Bramlett is also quoted as saying, Jane probably just took things out of context, clearly trying to direct the attention from himself and on to Jane the victim. On 10/23/2022, this is now 8 days after the initial investigation started, Bramlett meets with the investigator. He shows the video. Bramlett's response, video can be altered. I'm not sure Lula possesses the necessary technology for that, but hey, we are Lula. Who knows? I know this has been a lot of details, but this is where I want you all to focus. On 10/12/22, everyone involved was told not to talk about the incident. In Gene Bramlett's statements, he says the mayor and his wife come to his house to discuss the incident. At his house. First, not the mayor's wife's business. We did not elect her, she holds no office. Second, when an investigation is underway and you have a direct order not to discuss the incident, that means you don't discuss it. That means our mayor, who is elected and holds office, cannot be trusted to keep his official meetings in the confidence of his own council. I learned a very important phrase today, ad hominem. It means to attack an opponent's character rather than to answer to the questions that have been made. I'm sharing this with you because it directly ties to Bramlett's next quote. Again, this is a direct quote. If I wanted to look at her behind, I could do it any time I want. Jane struts around the office and outside smoking. This statement alone is an attack on Jane's character. Here are a few more of his quotes. There is nothing the council can do to me but reprimand me or recall me. Clearly, Mr. Bramlett, you have forgotten you were not elected to work for the mayor or this council. You, sir, were elected to work for the citizens of Lula. Bramlett contends he is bothered by the fact that the mayor and his wife told him that the city manager was trying to get rid of him. Fact, fiction, pure gossip, at this point, no one knows. He even acknowledges that the mayor's wife informs other people about the incident. We can clearly see where the direct order not to speak about this incident is not taken seriously by our administration and his wife. I will close with this. If the Me Too movement has taught us anything, it has taught us that we will no longer go along to get along. And even in our small town, these actions were not acceptable before, not acceptable now, and will not be acceptable in the future. Thank you.
Anybody else? Can I rebut this?
This would be great.
Oh, yeah. You're acting like a believer, that's for sure. I'm sorry, but I can't be silent. And so people speak against Christianity, that's fine. But the Bible says, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. As far as the marriage is concerned. This is a bunch of nonsense, all it is. God has led me to get involved in the city. Whether people believe it or not, I don't care. Because I answer to the man upstairs. And I've gotten to know the mayor and his wife in a personal way, and Councilman Bradley. And God has connected me with you. These people are just attacking you with false accusations. Nothing has been proven.
It was in the investigation quoted.
Nothing was proven. Nothing was proven. It was closed. It's he said, she said. So someone can make an accusation and automatically get guilty? Excuse me. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Excuse me. That investigation, is it not closed?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay, and nobody was found guilty of anything?
That's not the purpose of an investigation. The investigation is closed.
Thank you. Anyway, here I am. I have family and stuff around. And when I needed to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go and have a heart cath to save my life, who do you think took me? The mayor's wife. Thank you, Miss Patty Thomas. Thank you, Mr. Joe Thomas. Nobody else offered to do that. So I'm thankful for the mayor, and I'm thankful for your Christianity, and I'm thankful, Mr. Bradley, for your stand. And I'm going to continue to stand with you against the spirit of darkness. Thank you. Anybody else?
Well, that's.
Yep.
Yeah, only Christians.
Y'all look forward and keep moving Lula forward. We're gonna get some junky houses torn out. And if anyone wants to comment on this investigation, in about a month, you're welcome to go down to Howell County. Or be subpoenaed. Then next week you can voice your opinion. It's over. Y'all need to learn how, when y'all do an in-house con or whatever y'all doing on the investigation, it needs to be in house. Just like what just went on the other day. Now, that's between y'all. It's not between you. You see how this works. Everybody gets kicked off, hit each other, and it's there's a bunch of trouble. We need to get back on the ball. We need to try and concentrate if you're going to raise sewer up, or leave it at that. Because I'm telling you, as a contractor, I'm talking to a bunch of people. And they don't like that high rise. And I think we're going to lose some heads up in these subdivisions. But I know it's been a tough year. Nobody wants this change. And we got it. And we learn how to deal with it, work together, move forward. Certain people ticked off, they lost their spots. But let's move forward. Thank you. And God bless everyone. Because I want, and that's my belief.
I know
Here just in time. Robert Preston, MOA. You know, I've already a few things, and thank you, Mr. Holmes, about clarifying that on the investigation. Anybody that pays any attention to any TV of any cities or anything or government, no investigation leads to the city or nation or presidential candidate, anybody admitting to wrongdoing, but generally the city takes care of it, or the municipality that the investigation is done, they generally take care of it. They never admit the wrongdoing. It's never happened. Never happened. But it doesn't mean that it didn't happen. You know, Councilman didn't deny taking the photos of my granddaughters until he was called the night of the last council meeting by Mr. Thomas's wife. Called her, said, look, he called me, said, look, deny. Because she asked me, what proof did we have? She didn't let me finish. I just told her one thing, I didn't tell her about two others, cameras, this, that, and the other. But I saw where it led to. My thing on that is, Councilman, you have a legitimate reason to drive by my home multiple times a day. Every day of the week. Legitimately. There would have been a time to take pictures of my house, my swimming pool, my fence, my chickens, whatever, when those little girls were in that swimming pool. You could wait. You could wait, but you didn't. You never denied it. Through months of me up here blasting you for it until you were called by Miss Thomas after the night of the last council meeting. The reports speak for themselves. And both of them are just unbelievable. Unbelievable. But with that said, I'm making it short tonight. Every one of y'all up there are elected. You're elected by the people of Louisville. Make no mistake, this is our town. And we can replace you. We can replace you before the next election or at the next election. But the process is underway and it can be done. You're here to work for us as our elected representatives. And as I stated the very first time I came here back in July, I couldn't go to my councilman. I couldn't go to him because he was the one targeting me. Because he was mad. He was mad. Over childish issues. Childish. But y'all are elected. Make no mistake. The city, while it's y'all city too, because you're residents here, but it is our city. Everything speaks for itself, and we'll let the people of Louisville speak again. Thank you.
Amen, Robert.
Anybody else?
No, because he said most of what I was about to say. So we're good.
I got a question.
We're good.
Mr. Wood just referenced a meeting on Friday, saying it's all done. Has he been deputized? Do he know stuff we don't know? So I was there, and as soon as we got there, both meetings, nothing was said. But it seems Mr. Wood knows what was going on.
Let me come back. If you show up at all these meetings, everyone would want to show up, then they know what's going on.
Well, we were there, but we didn't see you there.
Come on.
You weren't there.
No, you weren't.
All right, that's enough, okay? Let's be civil.
Anybody else?
Having a discussion.
I'm sure it's for.
Anybody else? Got something to comment? Okay, we'll start this meeting now, y'all. The minutes for the last meeting, all right, I'll read them and decide if there's any changes with them, and we'll go over next week. Everybody got a copy of that? Okay, now then, yard of the month. That Nick Gavin. We're gonna pick yard of the month this coming week, we'll announce it next Monday night. It's been good spring, start with spring, almost, get it dried out. Okay, now then, I think I finally got that to you.
All righty. Let me change this microphone. You know, these things just eat batteries for a living. I apologize. That's what they do.
And you,
I'll try to be brief. We are in our 32nd week of the fiscal year. As we sit here today, we talk about of the 10 funds we have now. We talk about 2 of them, the operational funds primarily, whereas we should be at about 59% of the revenue already collected and 41% remaining. Good news for us is we got ARP money, which is $552,000, which distorts it. When you take that number out, we have actually revenues today of $898,765. We're right at 40%, which is exactly where we should be. We experience a lot of our revenues because we don't have property taxes in the third and fourth quarter, which is where we are right now. And you always hear me say it's important what you bring in, more importantly what goes out. Currently, same thing, we knock the numbers back out, we're at about 40% remaining on our expenditures, which is a great position to be in. We're actually $822,885, which would mean that we have a positive cash flow right now on the general fund of $75,880. We talked about the utility fund, which is important to us. Both those funds determine what we can do every day, not the capital component, the operational components. We have a little bit of distortion in the revenue there, whereas when we forecast the TAP fees, the TCRs we were talking about earlier, we estimated we'd bring in $125,000 in TAP fees. Well, boy, were we wrong, because year to date we brought in $391,000. If I left that in the revenue stream, you can see how that affects the numbers. So we actually back that number out, which brings us year to date $667,024, which is actually a great position to be in. It would suggest we only have 28% of the revenue still coming in, but where we should be at 40. More importantly, when we go back over on the water and sewer side of it, on the expenditures, we brought in $689,956, which would suggest we have a positive cash flow of $22,932. Great position to be in. Overall, we'll talk about bank balances in a second. Positive cash flow of $97,000. Hats off to the council for the work they do on preparing the budget every year, which, believe it or not, we're soon to be doing that again. I thought I could spring that on, but apparently I don't on our bank balances. So we keep track of all that. I'm going to give a copy to the council as we speak. Some of y'all got this last week. Hadn't changed that much. That's the good news. We currently have. Joe, would you like a copy of that? I sure do. Currently, we have $6,208,000 in the bank that we can touch, and so some of those are reserved. So forecasting what the council would need in the future, we have a project right now. You'll hear me talk a little bit more about that, and the sewer line I, which is over a $2 million project. You heard me just a minute ago talking about $300,000 project for a new wet well production well that we're seeking. We've earmarked $397,000 for resurfacing and road improvements. There's some more opportunity there. We'll talk about that. And then we have another $2 million project that's in its development stage right now. So the good news, I would suggest to everybody in the audience, is that we're in a good position as we sit here today, and we're very fortunate to talk about being blessed. We are blessed, but that doesn't come without some understanding. Real quick, I'll hit you with numbers that might put you to sleep. We're up about $6,000 over collections for the previous month's billing on water and sewer. We are going to be talking about the opportunity for a new special local option sales tax that we're in conversation with. Mr. Mayor, you should have gotten an email on that. We can compare notes on that. But the council brought up to me a couple of weeks ago about how do we compare. Let me pull up some of this so you can see how we compare. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but the numbers speak for themselves. So I have business license. That's important. But let's talk about water and sewer rates. So water and sewer rates are all about operations, not the capital component we're talking about. So I'm going to give the council, and I'll leave more of these out for everybody to look at. So the water and sewer rates, we're not the lowest, we're not the highest, but we're doing exactly what you're set to do, and that is cover your operational costs. They love to hear me say if it costs us $1, we should charge $1. Well, that way you stay out of trouble. Especially because one of the sheets on the handout is we don't have And so that's the next sheet I'm going to compare. And so interesting thing with property taxes, because the council has continued to choose not to recognize that form. And let's see here. Everybody loves that. So interesting when you start comparing yourselves to other communities, and you can see how many dollars they generate, and actually how many dollars y'all save. An example, in Hall County, your tax based on a $150,000 home. Nobody's owns $150,000 anymore. At 40% of its value, you're paying $248.46. Or if you compare that to City of Flower and Ranch, it's $195. If you compare that to the City of Cornelia, and this isn't a criticism, $480 savings. Whereas we're collecting zero on that. City of Gainesville, which taxes a little bit different, $531. Our friends in the City of Alto at 6.2 millage rate, $372. And Banks County, which, you know, to their credit, 3.83% millage rate, it's not too bad. It's almost like pulling a rabbit out of your hat, which is what this council does here, because they're very fiscally responsible in that regard. The last thing I'm going to bring up is business license, because they had asked for this information. And we're going to have a little bit of a conversation a little bit later on that. We charge $75, doesn't matter if you have 5 employees, or 10 employees, or 100 employees. You compare that to some of the other cities, and they're all over the board. But anyway, this gives you a reference that the council had asked for. It doesn't mean that we're the lowest on everything. It means that we are keeping track of everything. And an example is, our friends up in Cornelia, as an example, and again, we're not picking on anybody here, but $215 versus $75 that the City of Louisville charges. So just bear that in mind, especially when you don't have property taxes to be able to go back on. But anyway, that had been information the council had asked me for previously. So let's see. Liability insurance, just to let y'all know, our liability insurance finalized in April. I met with them this past week. Those who were in the finance committee are aware of some of the discussion we had. The idea is that we'll hopefully be able to bring in 3 competitive bids that are earmarked or similar in size and scope. As you heard tonight, we've already talked about the water and sewer TCR fees. To a positive note, our friends at Riles Brothers had committed some dollars for the caboose improvements we made, so we received a check for $1,500 from them. Very appreciative of that. Computer hardware update. Tony Cornett, a lot brighter than most of us in this room, at least a lot brighter than me, is helping us with some of the hardware issues. Tony, did you say you copied everybody on that?
I did copy all council.
Well, it's Greek to me, so I hope you can explain it to all of us in the near future. But anyway, the hardware we have in-house right now is 5 years old, and that may not seem old to you, especially if you've got one sitting in the house like I do, but we have a fiscal responsibility to make sure that is replaced in a timely fashion, and that's what we're considering right now. So fortunately, Tony, that's his forte. He's helping to guide the city a little bit more on that with our current supplier. So other than that, Mr. Mayor, on finance, I'll take any questions y'all might have. All right, so the water and sewer system, and you can see we've got a lot to talk about tonight. Water system, you already heard me talk about the well. You've heard me talk about the proposed TCRs. Remind everybody, as Joey did earlier, that we have another meeting next Monday night at 7 o'clock on the 20th. County line tank, we had just replaced the transducer in the tank. That doesn't mean anything to you, but it actually helps us measure the levels in the tank. Only to have a problem with the data stream on it. We're still working on that. This is what happens in a work session. I just give everybody kind of heads up, things that are activities that are not of any consequence. You probably won't see that on the agenda next week unless we run into a significant problem. The good news is, and I don't expect applause, but we opened sewer line I today. So that means we closed the Fifth Street pump station at 4 o'clock this afternoon, which is a big savings to the city, not only in operations, but in replacement costs. And sewer line, we'll be wrapping that up. It'll probably, originally we thought we'd be done by the end of December. It rained, and we thought we might be done by the end of February. And we probably will be real close to that, but we're probably going to extend that into the month of March. But good news is, as of today, we're not paying the cost of replacement. We're not paying operational costs. And that sewer line actually is fed by 2 other pump stations. So it's a big deal for us. I mean, big savings overall. Just the council knows this, but a pump station is going to cost you in the neighborhood, or that particular one would cost you if you had to replace it, and it was due for replacement, about $800,000. So we put in a new sewer line I, that opens up additional opportunities for economic growth on 365 area primarily, and on top of that, we eliminated the pump station. Man, if we do that again, you're talking about pulling a rabbit out of your hat. That probably won't happen again. But lucky for us, City of Lula groundwater water renewal permit. We just finalized the negotiations on that. I've signed that. Y'all should have gotten a copy of it. So it's a little bit different. Normally, renewal process is only 5 years. Now the state is extending that to 10 years. We'll actually see the new numbers come back shortly. Some things that are, from an administrative standpoint, will be changing. Water meter boxes and purchasing. So we currently have Neptune meters. For those that know, we're in our 4th generation of meters. If you have one like this in your house right now, or serving your house right now, these are not cheap. They're $265 a piece. We're looking at the option of, remember I said this a second ago, it's 4th generation. So really what that means is not only are they get 2. So we're looking at the 5th generation meters. When I say meters, that's any vendor. But the newest meters are unique in that they can supply a lot of information back to the property owner themselves. So I think that's only a matter of time before it's going to be expected of us. So the utility committee is looking at what opportunities might be out there in the availability for meters. This particular one I hold in my hand is what we call a data stream meter, and it works off of Verizon. And when you purchase that meter, you buy 10 years worth of information that can be, that you as a consumer could pull up immediately and look on your computer and see how much water you used last month, how much water you used yesterday, and best of all, have you got a leak? You can actually, it's some of the coolest stuff. And, it's coming about. Not inexpensive, but at some point you got to say, well, when does it begin to pay for itself for the amount of data that you can pull down? So not something that's going to happen overnight. However, I say that because we budget every year to purchase about 200 meters. Every one of y'all see it on your water bills already. Remember, it says on their water meter replacement. The idea behind that is I don't have to charge you $265 when your meter fails. And they all last about 10 years, just to let you know how that works. So I'll be purchasing, we budgeted for this, and I'll be purchasing another 100 meters here shortly as the council continues to consider what we can do as far as an upgrade and what opportunities will be there. Let's see. Maintenance being performed on the influent bar screen at the wastewater treatment plant. I'd say that we're doing a rebuild on the waste pump for packing on the clarifier. I know everybody gets excited. It's going to run home and talk about all these great things. We had an EPD wastewater report that was 257 items that they came in and did a study on. And we copied this all in the council. And out of 257 items, they found 3, let's see what they call them. I was going to call them deficiencies. Let's see what they call them. Compliance items. Partial flume and aeration steps had algae growth come out there any day of the week. It grows every day. Replaced dead UV bulbs. We've already done that. Determined best capital treatment on grease buildup, and we can continue to work with that. My hat goes off to the entire staff, not only wastewater staff, but also to Hoyt and his crew, Tangi and Teresa, because all of us play a role in recording the records, what we do every day with regards to our water and sewer system. So I'm pleased this report reflected what a good job we do day in and day out. And at the same time, it complements what y'all can expect from the consumer standpoint. Not an easy task. We spend a great amount of dollars to make sure what we do with water and sewer is correct. And it comes at an expense, but one that you should all sleep well at night. We've got some permit changes coming up on wastewater. When y'all hear about a beach being closed, Lake Lanier, you hear a beach being closed because the fecal content usually from a big rain event has skyrocketed. It's over 200 parts per million. That's a big deal. I don't expect anybody to get excited about it. But we're actually looking at E. coli now instead of just the fecal side of it. So that's going to be a permanent change for us. And I mentioned that, remember this, because it may come as an expense to us. We do a lot of our own lab analysis, but that may be one that we have to send outside, and that will come as an expense to us, and it'll be in a monthly report. I haven't seen it at the DMR yet, but I anticipate it. Last but not least, you've heard, for those who've been in attendance, everything we do with wastewater has redundancy built in. Usually it's one or two backup pumps, this, that, or the other thing. We have 3 influent pumps. That doesn't mean anybody in this room. We had one go bad and we rebuilt about 2.5 years ago. We ordered a brand new one about 2 years ago. I think it was April of 2021. I received it 3 weeks ago. It was sitting outside. That's how problematic what's happened with the supply chain right now. So good that we have it on hand, bad that it should take 2 years to get it, and of course it's built from the ground up. Mr. Mayor, has anybody got any questions on water and sewer?
I don't. Street committee. Recommend options we're looking at. Somebody said that they wanted to figure out some way to control the pass-through traffic on Maiden Lane.
Right. I can give you what I've got here. So, and I've got a handout for y'all. So we looked at the street committee. The idea was that they're getting a lot. This is on the northwest side on Maiden Lane between 51 and County Line Road. These were the 4 options that the committee talked about coming up. And one of the committee members want to talk about that? Tony, would you volunteer?
Sure, I'll volunteer. So I was going to bring up another option that we did not consider that had come since that last meeting. But yeah, so for the Maiden Lane, this is of course this section, not the one that's closest to the depot, but the one that connects what railroad,
51 to
county line and railroad. There's also a similar street right next to it, which is Mill Street, which we knew that if the way the council discussed it, or our committee discussed it, was that if we were going to do any speed control on one, we should probably do that on the other adjacent street, because they do meet right there at the entrance, like where someone's turning into Maiden, making their way down the hill. They could choose either Maiden or Mill Street, and if we were going to put speed control on one, we should probably do that on the other as well. One of the things that we did get was, and I'm not sure that I sent this out to all council just yet. We did get response from all 14 residents on Maiden Lane. I know there were 4 that came in, and we got the initial 10, and then there was a result on the other 4 that came in later. They are all in favor of putting speed controls for sure on Maiden. The options that we were looking at we were talking about, I didn't see this on here, did we take off, the directional? Is the directional on here?
So option one was,
Oh, okay, one way, okay, you see it here. So option one was, including making, Maiden Lane and Mill Street one-way streets. Correct, opposite ways, and I do believe, just in conversation with, some of the citizens, that may not be favorable, and I know that all of this would come, through public hearing. But right off the bat, I think option one with having it directional one way, might not be favorable. So it indicates here, it looks like resurfacing for option one. Looks like, what is this? 10 signs. We're looking at resurfacing an inch and a half at the 35,000 roughly. No speed table on option one. That was just directional. We were just going to deal with signage. So the total on that was going to be 35.6. Option two was to put 4 speed tables. And Dennis, was that 2 speed tables on
each street.
either street?
Right.
Okay. So that total cost, along with the signage, was going to be $29,654. Option three would be just 2 speed tables, and that's only on Maiden Lane, correct?
Correct.
If I'm reading that correctly.
Right.
And that would be 11,836 total. Option four was, let's see, you've got combined improvements, resurfacing, speed tables.
That's everything. You said you
Doing
want
everything to both streets, correct?
Right.
So that would be 58,618. And the most important thing that I pick up here is the speed table cost. The speed table right now, and I know when we first talked about it, we knew that we had purchased speed tables in the past, but I think that was more than 6 years ago, and the cost, of course, has gone up. So that would be $5,800 each, which certainly cut into the cost there. There was another option that was brought to my attention, and as well as others on the committee, from the citizens as well, a bolt-on speed bump as opposed to the speed table, because I know we were talking about, I guess, moving away from the speed bumps, but what we would traditionally know those as, and in favor of the speed table, which has the ramp leading up to, then a flat surface, and then a ramp going on the other side, which of course is a lot of concrete, thus leading to the $5,800 cost of each one. The other thing that was mentioned was anytime we have to resurface the street, which is why we wanted to include resurfacing at the same time, was that if we put speed tables in and we then later needed to do resurfacing, we would have to take those speed tables out, bust them up, destroy them. I know that there, as a matter of fact, I was sent some pictures still.
We've got bolt bolt-ons, not on through streets, but we have bolt-on in the cemetery now.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with those bolt downs are you need to put them in an area that's not going to have any speed to them because they're not speed rated. You can't even get a speed rating. That's the bigger challenge. But like I said, I think we've got 3 at the cemetery. Don't we have 3?
I think so. The cost on those seem to be significantly cheaper.
Oh yeah.
And, because they probably understand they don't last that long if people, continue to speed on them. But replacing them over and over, I honestly think we probably wouldn't match what we would spend on putting a speed table.
So what we've experienced with the bolt-ons is once they break loose, you end up having to resurface that whole section because they pull them straight up out of the ground. That's the challenge. Even I'm shocked the ones we have right now have lasted as long as they have. And I think those have been in, they've been in at least 4 or 5 years.
And that's not a high traffic area.
Right. Well,
Got a school bus running.
school buses hate it. Fashion, but they get it.
Honestly,
So it's something to weigh out. You just have to
I would
decide.
love to see it, an option for that, just with signage.
I can get you prices by next meeting.
Okay, excellent. And, one of the things that was brought to my attention with the bolt-on speed bumps is, you can separate them. I haven't seen the ones at the cemetery, but you can buy them, you know, they don't have to be all across the entire street or part of
Now
the
we
street.
can only
You
buy
can
them in
sections.
4-foot sections, and that way we can stop the drainage issue.
Exactly.
Get the others.
So when we need to repave, we just pull up, put them right back down unless they are so bad that they need to be repaired or replaced.
Yeah, I can get you those prices. You'll have them before the end of the week, so you
Okay.
can start considering.
Excellent. Does anyone else on council have any questions regarding the speed control options that were discussed? If anyone does, please send me an email, contact me, call me. We'll figure something out and we'll get any of those concerns to you, Dennis. Appreciate you looking those up for us. Thank you.
Okay, park those big bits. Looks like. And, the dog park, we're sort of in limbo about that, but we've looked at several dog parks around the town, around the area, and what they proposed was not gonna live up to their standards. So we'll table that idea for now. But we're looking at other options to go along with that, possibly, like Jim said, we're talking about a library, talking about a skate park, talking about a bike park. Other ideas, something to involve kids in the neighborhood. So that's something we're looking at. And we're also in the wellness park, we'll look at Wi-Fi and security cameras again.
So those, just so everybody understands, that's initial, putting in Wi-Fi, and it would include 3 security cameras. I just don't want anybody, it's a very expensive venture. So initially we just put in the building that we could locate and we could grow from, and then 3 cameras that would be primarily located around the restroom area, and then of course we'd have Wi-Fi, with the idea that we could expand that from year to year with additional cameras and additional, you can walk the park and still have the availability of Wi-Fi. So we have an estimated cost of $11,000. The only thing that I'd mentioned to the committee was the gentleman who we got quotes for the block building is recovering from carpal tunnel, and he would be another 2 months before he could even consider it. But if it's fine with the council, we'd like to put that on the agenda for next week for an amount not to exceed $11,000.
I think sure. I thought we. And, yeah, Carter, I don't have this in there. Again. All right, Carter. Oh. Yeah, well, I did hear about what to do with it after we tear the building down. And there's gonna be a public hearing on that, I'm sure, because everybody going some input into that. But we do have a builder's site inspection from 27th to 28th. Builder will tear those buildings down. The bid for tear those buildings down opens on March 9th, right here. Okay. All right, Hawken hazard mitigation resolution.
I'm sure you've read all that, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
So anybody that can't sleep at night, I have the document for you, 332 pages. It's actually something we do every 10 years. We revisit it, and we've actually utilized the previous emergency management plan. And if by chance you're hit by some natural disaster, tornado, hurricane, everybody laughs, we had a hurricane come up through here. And this makes money available through GEMA and FEMA. So we'll put that on for a resolution for next Monday night, if it's okay with the council. And we've negotiated this with Hall County. We have mutual aid agreements with all the other cities as well.
And we got an election coming up in November and Hall County.
Well, yeah, y'all gonna, everybody get out the smelling salts.
Did it change?
So we budgeted $7,500 more than we've ever spent for a municipal election anyway, and we have a new price. from Hall County. $18,097.60. Joey said he'd cover the 60 cents. You don't want to. Anyway, yeah, I know. So I checked with, we got this, I guess, last week. So we checked with City of Gainesville and our friends in Oakwood and Flower Branch, and not everybody's responded, but this appears to be, doesn't match Gainesville's number, but it appears to be the same amount they're proposing in the other cities as well.
So that's to think about, right?
Well, it's something we're going to have to, we've got some timelines Joey can speak to, so we'll have to make a decision on that relatively quick. In years past, I think the most we ever spent was about $4,000, and we anticipated to have additional costs because the additional machines, or the new machines this year. Like I said, we budgeted $7,500, so this came as a surprise.
Question. Did we have a estimate sheet like this for what we were paying previously, where it lists out precinct managers, assistant managers, clerks, how many hours?
Yes.
Do you have that? Is that something that I could have sent to me?
Yes, but the law changed, so we looked at what we did in years prior, but when they changed the law, you can see 92% of that fee is labor costs, and it would cost the city a multiple of that to get the necessary folks changed to perform that labor. But we will be happy to send you one.
Yeah, and the other part of that change is where it's passed in-house, we'd even be affected by that end price. But, and then in the last election, presidential election, which is what everybody remembers, but that was a joint election, so it was a shared cost between the county and the city. So we only paid a portional amount of that, not the $18,000 that's been experienced now.
And Joey, this law that was passed, this is the number of staff they have. Is this the minimum standard that Hall County has recommended, or are they adding extra to it?
No, this is the minimum. What we've got to look at, you'll see some of the math doesn't add up, and that's what we've just got to check on. In other words, you have precinct manager, it says number one at hours per employee 15, but then total hours 170. So I've just got to make sure with the elections office what we're really going to need. But my expectation is that's the number of folks they say will be at the Lula precinct. Mm-hmm. The reason it's so high is that it's our election. In other words, there's no other statewide election going on at that time.
Mm-hmm.
There may be a savior in the wind. Just to let you know, there may be a county-wide initiative that we can talk about.
Yes.
We're just not there yet.
Right. And they pointed that out.
Yes.
I mean, they obviously want to tell you high and not tell you low, and then have a bill come in much higher.
They were supposed to feel better about it.
Well, no. It's just, they say it could be lower. But we do have a couple of questions. Andy's meeting at the end of the month, and we'll see if we can get our questions in. We were not the only ones with questions.
I can imagine. So what Hall County has proposed is in response to the law passed by General Assembly regarding election reform.
Yes, they just didn't send the check with it. They just did the legal change.
All right, thank you.
Nice shot, right? Okay. Parks and President Committee has looked at the deposit fees for nonprofit use of the depot. And where are we at?
where we left that, there was a lot of discussion, that y'all set aside a $50 deposit, which would be refunded upon each use. And then you looked at limiting the number of, which I don't know that we ever arrived, the number of nonprofits that could utilize for those 16 days in a month that were Monday through Thursday days that the council would consider hearing nonprofits.
Well, I'd like to say I'm definitely not in favor of charging the ladies, and I'm definitely not in favor of charging the historic side. Not even change my mind.
So you want us to put that on the agenda for consideration?
I don't care for everybody to vote on.
It's not, it's just a deposit, they get the deposit back and this, thing.
That's where we left it.
That's for all nonprofit. They get the money back if the building clean. They clean the building. But you can't discriminate against other non-profits. You have to go across the board with it.
Has there been any discussion regarding, I guess, the recurring use tenants that would have a monthly, would they just be placing a $50 deposit and then have it returned at a particular month? You know, as long as, because I just don't, I would hate for it to be administratively, more burdensome. Like, if someone were to,
So then that's for the next month?
yeah, if that's an option. Not every nonprofit would want that, but if it were an option, it would be administratively
Every
favorable.
for the next month.
Mhm. Yeah.
I think
As I think we should probably, if that's the route that's going to be taken, I would want to make sure that we have documented how far in advance the deposit has to be received.
We get a deposit now, we wouldn't treat anybody any different. When you book the date, we get the deposit now. That's, that way, because we often have people say, well, I thought I was available for the 5th. Well, you didn't put the money down,
I think you're talking about recurring.
Yeah, well, and I'd be fine with reoccurring. I can tell you right now, I'm easier on it.
I think if you want $50 and roll it into the next
And
month.
if they don't,
Come back to rules and get rolled next month. Okay, the Planning Commission has looked at the IBC.
subdivision regulations, so we're changing that. No, that's different from IBC. We need to still get together on that. But we're looking at subdivision regulations that reflect non-zoning issues, curb, gutter, those type of things specific to those. So they should be finalizing that, and we'll bring that back to the planning committee, zoning and planning committee on the council. So we're still probably a couple of months away, because eventually we probably have a public hearing for that finalized.
Okay, business license. Permit uses.
Yeah, I bring that up because it's been, in the past, we've had some criticism. What a business license is actually an occupational tax, or a tax, that's the way ours actually reads. And the criticism that we've heard previously is do we control the type of businesses that we form in the city? Well, yes, we do, but not through that ordinance. We do that through our zoning ordinance. The use of that property dictates that. But if you remember, there was criticism about a gentleman next to Amanda's. just as an example, we're not picking on anybody tonight. But that occupational tax doesn't allow us to regulate what activities you have. It's all about how that property is zoned and whether or not. So what I'm trying to say is there's limits that we can do within what the zoning ordinance allows us. I don't think your method, Joey, you might want to look into this a little bit more. It's why I bring it up, is because we couldn't reject a business license solely currently on the occupational tax. That's a given. We couldn't do it on that. But the challenge is for us, as someone that expands their business, and whether or not that would be allowable. Does that make sense to y'all? In other words, they start out today and they sell soap. Well, tomorrow they decide,
Flash up in a 10 minute.
right. That's a perfect example. Thank you. So, but it's a struggle for us because, we can't make it up as we go. So if that's something the council wants to start considering, that would be something we need to charge back to Joey on, so he can start developing something that's going to give you what you're seeking in that regard.
The state statute does exempt some professions, so you can always tell which professions have strong lobbies and which are still working the other direction. So, but the state statute designates which ones you cannot charge business license and occupation tax. Otherwise, as Dennis is pointing out, the scheme is pretty wide open about whether you have.
And it's not something we can manage. Right.
Okay. The 365 in the port, Hall County just put that on hold for another month, is that correct?
So we did two things when we were with the street committee. Y'all wanted to see if we couldn't get a internal meeting between our new commissioner and the council, or the representatives of the council. So some of y'all have responded. Those who haven't, let me know your availability. And then the idea is we might try in the coming month, including right now, a Monday or Tuesday to meet internally and begin to talk about that. We want to make sure our new commissioners, I think he is up to speed on it, and then how we might address the issues before we meet. Our friends at GDOT said that we would meet in the month of February, and I sent them a reminder too that we still don't have a date from them and haven't gotten a response. So the whole idea is just making sure everybody's up to speed. So if you have told me when you're available, they're looking at Mondays and Tuesdays. It would be best served for them.
Would that be here or?
I said we would be open to them or Hall County. Yeah, Wednesday. I'm sorry. You're right. So let's see. So it could be either way, Gene. We just want a chance to meet.
I was just trying to figure out what we're gonna do.
Yep, they hadn't said yet. So let's try to nail a date down and see what works.
I'm motivated.
Yeah, I know you're very, you make yourself
I
work.
want to do that.
Right.
Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee is on the fourth Thursday of the month. They've got an online survey for your input for community administration if you want to do it online. Got QR code to scan it and start filling out surveys. All you got to do. It's really simple.
And I think there's some more QR, the surveys over there really are. Very simple.
Have they decided a deadline on that?
We're going to take them for the next 2 months. We actually have talked about taking them all the way into May with help. They might influence
I was thinking that most of
it.
Yeah. And your ladies meet at the depot on the
22nd.
And just open site on the fourth Monday of the month, which is 2 weeks away. And we gotta do some more committee scheduling. We don't have one Wednesday left, so we gotta do this during the weekend, yes,
We can shoot at it.
Huh?
We can shoot at it. There's no doubt. We got to And public safety is one, and of course the residential building requirements is one that's been out there for a while, so we certainly get with those.
Somebody asked me on the way in here tonight, Dave Billing, as a matter of fact, is bought a bookcase to put in front of Louisville Mercantile as a mini library. And, he wants to be refunded $50. He says he paid $75 for the bookcase. He received the reimbursement of $50 for the mini library. We'll put that on committee, send that to committee, so they say we won't do it.
Actually, you read it wrong, Mr. Mayor.
Sir?
It was $75, but she gave it us for 50
Yeah.
when I explained what it was for.
You want $50 reimbursement?
Yeah.
And you talk them down and say,
I don't mind volunteering, but I don't want to pay to volunteer.
okay, now I guess, you guys got anything else they want to add to this before we go to executive session? Let's do citizen comment first. Before we go to executive session, let's do that. Let's do citizen comment before we go to executive session. Got more citizen comments? Yes, ma'am.
I'm still June Benson, 4719 Old Cornelia Highway, Louisville, Georgia. I want to thank you all for considering buying the AEDs, because I think they're really important. I really appreciate that. Also, for everyone that wasn't here when I spoke before, I have a petition at the back table. If you'd like to see a library built in Lula, please sign my petition. I also have information of a lot of the activities that the library has. That's all I have to say. Thank you. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I'm a certified instructor in California. Not here, but if you want to be too, I would get certified in Georgia. No problem.
Okay.
I'm curious, are you also CPR trained?
Sorry?
Are you also CPR trained?
Yeah, but not in.
No, I got.
I gotta get certified in
That's a
Georgia
big
if
deal
you want
for
me
us
to
too.
do that.
Anybody else? All right, I'll entertain those for executive session. Oh, I'm sorry.
Again, I thought we were done with the Historical Society at the depot. I don't see us discriminatory to provide a service to two vital programs to our community, the Little Ladies and the Historical Society. It's a whole lot, 8, 10, I don't know how many people go to those meetings, but I've heard, somewhere between 8 to 10, maybe 15 people, adults, usually, I'm sure, that's going to these meetings is going to have a big different effect. And keep in mind, they do not have a facility within the city limits. I love what Eric at Liberty has done here at the depot. The things he's provided for the kids and everybody is great. Other churches, I think, should do it, but they do have their own facilities. You bring 20, 30 kids to the depot, things get a little bit different than 5 or 10 ladies meeting, or a few people meeting for the Historical Society. They may not be a nonprofit 501c, but they have an income, a disposable income for such venues. It's not discriminatory to charge a nonprofit church for the depot differently than two vital organizations that are truly nonprofit, not bringing in money, as the Little Ladies and the Historical Society. I still reiterate, we should at least give them the lease that they need to cover them for years to both groups. And it's not discriminatory because you're not going to have to send in, Mr. Sparky or Johnny the plumber in there to fix the building after 100-something people have been in there over a day or two. Bathrooms, you're not going to have to call waste management to come clean it up. It's a whole different ballgame. And there's nothing wrong. I love the movie night. That's wow, what a hit. We love going up there. But again, you know, and I'd love to see everybody in Louisville turn out. But it's gonna be different between 10 to 12 very mature people meeting and cleaning that depot up. Because at the end of the night, when there's 100 people there, they're not gonna volunteer to clean it up. I know, Mr. Garnett can tell you, I've shot off a lot of fireworks in the past, and I couldn't even get the people that was at my house to volunteer to clean up the mess it made. I was out there at 12 o'clock at night with a broom and a shovel. But that needs to be put to bed. We need those vital groups here. It helps build our community. It helps build what we got here tonight. For over 20 years, I've been coming off and on to council meetings to every mayor since I moved here. I love seeing the crowd we got, but it's unfortunate why we got the crowd, isn't it? The politics has brought out the crowd, and it's not clean politics. We need vital organizations that's going to help us bond as a community and help make good plans for our community. And it's not discriminatory to make a space for them when they have not a space, as other 501c has. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
How you doing again? I got a good deed. I'm gonna start tomorrow. We got the church and volunteer materials. We're gonna do the labor and all for a lady on 7th Street that needs a toilet bathroom. You know, so we need more people to help out, look for neighbors that in stress that ain't got money to remodel or fix. So, anyway, that's what I'll be doing tomorrow. Everybody can come by and look at it. Thanks. Sit down.
Anybody else? Okay, I entertain a motion to executive session then. Jim Brown, go to executive session, here a second.
Second.
Second by Darren Smith, first one I heard. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're going to executive session.
We're back to the council comment.
Yeah, let's go.
We already made a motion. We've already made a motion.
Okay. We're gonna make a little
They're gonna get back to it. 7 months
Did you work for that? Okay, that's what I'm saying. I know they were over there a lot.
They got